Good evening. Wow, what a great crowd. I think we should give you all a hand. Thank you so much for coming today. My name is Madeline Isley, and it is my honor to serve as the chair of the Oakwood Inclusion Coalition. The Oakwood Inclusion Coalition's mission is to study, promote, and celebrate an inclusive, equitable, diverse, and welcoming environment and community for everyone who lives, works, visits, or even just passes through Oakwood. So on behalf of the leadership team of the OIC, as we call ourselves, welcome, welcome, welcome. It's so heartening to see such a great crowd full of friends and neighbors I've already run into and received some wonderful hugs this evening. Thank you very much for that. Let me start first by thanking the library. Thank you to Wright Memorial Public Library for hosting this event and for providing the technology for our friends and neighbors who are online. They're even putting out extra chairs now. How awesome is that? Thank you to our speakers. I know Jevan is going to be introducing them. We look to events like this to help us understand how we can contribute, how we collectively, all of us, can contribute to a more welcoming, inclusive, and equitable world. Not just Oakwood, though we are the Oakwood Inclusion Coalition. We want to embrace everyone, no matter where they're from. You know, the United States has long been the destination for waves of refugees. And you think about the reasons for fleeing your homeland could run from everything from economic hardship to political instability, food insecurity, violence, or combinations thereof. I didn't know until I Googled today that the United States' first refugee crisis was actually between 1791 and 1810. This was reported in the Smithsonian Magazine in January of 2017. More than 25,000 refugees arrived on American shores from the French colony of Saint-Dominique, which we now know today as Haiti. These were freed slaves and even white plantation owners. And you think about, my goodness, that was very early. That early in the birth of this nation, where the United States was seen as a welcoming and open arm location. Everything from the mid-1800s, the potato crisis, potato famine crisis in Ireland. The late 1800s saw civil unrest and economic stability in Poland and Russia. Of course, we know that many Jewish families fled here leading up to and through World War II. And then more recently, we know that we have become the new home of families from Southeast Asia. My goodness, I remember being a kid, nightly news and seeing both families, remember? More recently, Ethiopians, Somalians, Central Americans, especially from El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras. There are many of our global neighbors whom we can assist in small ways and large ways. And I know you're all looking forward to learning exactly how we can all make a meaningful contribution to this. So with that, let me give it to Jevan to give you formal introductions and start the program. Thank you again for coming.
Hi, I'm Jevan Furmanski. I helped to organize this meeting here today with my wonderful wife, Kate, who actually did everything, but she asked that I give the words because and to quote her, she would rather die than introduce a meeting in public like this. But I think I'm up to it. So A couple of words from me on what I hope to achieve today. A very few, because this isn't about me and I know very little about anything. But what I do know is that I think we are all here in common cause and interest in refugee issues. And specifically, the motivating notion that led us to organize this meeting and bring everyone together is that I'd like to have everybody come away with the answers that are useful to them to two questions. The first question is, what is going on with humanitarian and refugee resettlement in the Dayton area? And two, what can be done by each of us? What are the opportunities to get involved? And both of these have many layers to them, and each of us, I think, will come away with a personal takeaway or a way that they feel that they can get involved, and at least a deeper understanding of what is already going on and the deep resourcing that's already available and the depth of the programming that exists to assist refugees who are being resettled. So I'd like to introduce first our two speakers. First, Sam Bain from Senator Portman's office will give some words. An overview of the humanitarian parolee program. This is the new program that's specifically for Ukrainians leaving that conflict zone. And also some other words on ongoing refugee issues in Ohio. And secondly, we'll hear from Laura Roesch. She is at Catholic Social Services, Miami Valley, and we'll hear CSS, as you'll hear, is the only NGO that's that partners with the State Department for resourcing of refugees arriving in our area. And they have longstanding and deep programming that we will get to hear a lot about. After we hear from them, we will have a Q&A. So we'll have a panel of additional people from the community. So we have, I believe, Mike King from Senator Brown's office. I haven't seen him arrive yet. But we do have Ashley Lackovich from the Brunner Literacy Center. And John, I'm sorry, I'm going to butcher his name, but the executive director from the Ebenezer Healthcare Access, Molly Brunk from B Hope Immigration Center. And last but not least, Mike Lehner from the also CCSMV, who was instrumental in working with us to develop the programming and educate us and helping bring everything together. So thank you, Mike. And one last personal note from me, maybe to set the context for what we're going to hear today. So I say that many of us are here to find out how we can get involved. And the context that I wanted to put forward, we had some historical context given by the prior speaker. Well, there's also the present context. The present context is in our daily lives, the vicissitudes of the world lead to events that compete for our attention and our resources, and even our, in some cases, capacity for outrage. These can lead us to prioritize what we do and to feel like we have to pick one thing over another. And the context that I'd like to give you is something that I really took away from something that Mike told me. When a Congolese refugee enters a refugee camp today, they're told on the way into the refugee camp that the average wait time before they get resettled is 20 years. So when a refugee arrives here in the United States, this is the end of an arduous path. Not only were they displaced from their home potentially through violence, but they've been waiting for years in conditions that we can scarcely imagine. And then they arrive here. And that's when the assistance begins. That's when we get involved. So when we think to ourselves, can I get involved? Do I have time? Look at all of these other things that deserve my time, remember that the people that we're talking about have been years on the path to getting here. And so prioritizing and imagining that it's one thing or another, when we're talking about a timescale that transcends presidential administrations, many of us have even moved between cities, and there can be people who move into these refugee camps that have become mothers and grandmothers. So the timescale here, I think, transcends any kind of concern about, do I have time or resources now? So that's what I took from a conversation that I had with Mike. And I hope we all can maybe get outside the usual hubbub of our lives and imagine what we can do and really listen deeply and see what comes of it. So without further ado, Sam, take it away.
Thank you, Jevan. Thank you, Jevan and Kate, for organizing this. Again, my name is Sam Bain. I represent Senator Portman here in the Dayton region. I'll start off with a media statistic I heard a few years ago.
I can't hear you very good.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'll speak up. I will start off with a media statistic I heard a number of years ago, and it was that the average news story stays in the news cycle for about 6 weeks. And we are on day 126 of Russia's unjust invasion into Ukraine. And unfortunately, media coverage here in the United States has waned significantly. So at the get-go, I just want to say it's a testament to you all in the Oakwood community for being here and staying engaged and learning how you can help the people of Ukraine. For just a few minutes, I want to go into kind of what's been going on with the war and how the federal government has assisted the people of Ukraine, and more specifically, what Senator Portman has been doing on that front. Senator Portman is the co-chair and co-founder of the Ukraine Caucus. He has made helping the Ukrainian people one of his top priorities. There is about 50,000 Ukrainians here in the state of Ohio. They are a part of our population. They are a part of our communities, and we know many of them have families over there. So we think it's important to continue to help them. So far, the United States has allocated a significant amount of funding, billions of dollars worth, in security assistance to help the people of Ukraine. That includes weaponry, vehicles, and other defensive measures, and of course, billions more in economic and humanitarian assistance. But the war continues to rage on, and so we believe it's so imperative that Congress continues to work in a bipartisan manner with President Biden to not only help Ukraine fight Russia, but to win the war. We've consistently pushed the administration to do more when there are times when we felt like they could have been quicker on things. We've stayed engaged, and one of the ways we've done this is by floor speeches. Senator Portman has given about 16 consecutive floor speeches since the start of the war, constantly encouraging the administration and his colleagues in Congress to continue to keep up support. One example I will provide: just a few weeks ago, the Ukrainian army sunk a Russian vessel in the Black Sea. That Russian vessel was on its way was delivering weapons to be able to attack the people of Ukraine, but they were able to sink it. And they did so with a Harpoon anti-ship missile that came from the West. And it saved lives that they were able to stop that. That's just one very real example of how the governmental support that we work to provide with colleagues in the Senate and the House has gone to helping the people of Ukraine. And what they're telling us now is that they need more long-range artillery. So we've gotten them about 4 of the missile systems. They need, I think, close to 60 is what they need to make an impact. So we are working on some of those measures as well. But Senator Portman's message throughout all this is that we cannot let up, and we must continue to support Ukraine, because they are a key ally of ours in the fight for freedom and democracy. And I will say that when Russia started this war, they thought it would be a lot easier. But thanks to the united front of countries in Europe, the United States, other countries around the world helping Ukraine, it's given the Ukrainian people, who are so resilient and so brave, a fighting chance. On refugees, one of the things we've done is the senator has just introduced, a couple weeks ago actually, the Relief for Ukraine Act. That stands for the Repurposing Elite Luxuries into Emergency Funds. Basically would require the Department of Justice to direct any funds resulting from the disposal of seized Russian assets to support Ukrainian refugees and eventually reconstruction. And also, we are committed to helping refugees and welcome them here in Ohio. As I said, there are 50,000 Ukrainians already in the state of Ohio, and we know they're going to want to be close to the communities. We know there's going to be a desire to come to the United States and to come to Ohio in particular. So we are willing to do that. We know that there are people in Ohio willing to open their homes, and we think it's encouraging that the Biden administration has been putting in place processes to welcome refugees. There is a new program that was launched by the administration in April called Uniting for Ukraine. I'm sure many of you are familiar with that by now, but I'll just kind of provide some overviews of it. Basically, this allows Ukrainians to seek refuge in the United States on a temporary basis known as humanitarian parole, with the support of a sponsor in the United States. That's one of the key things, is that they have to have a sponsor in the United States. And there are other refugee admissions programs that the US has. There is kind of a standard humanitarian parole. Those take a long time because of the way the federal government has set them up. It can be up to 2 years before refugees can actually get into this country, and in some cases even longer. So the Uniting for Ukraine program represents a much faster entry process into the United States. And it is a way for the US to complement the efforts of other countries who have been helping Ukrainian refugees. I know Poland, for example, has been taking millions and millions of refugees being there on the border. I do want to mention Senator Portman has visited Ukraine about 8 or 9 times, being chair of the Ukraine caucus. He's visited before and after the invasion. He was just across the border of Ukraine a couple months ago, being able to talk to those refugees that were coming across and hear their story. As well as meeting in Poland with US military leadership. But we're really excited about the Uniting for Ukraine program because it makes the process really easier if you think about all the trauma that someone who's a refugee, what makes them a refugee in the first place, has to go through. The last thing they want to have to deal with is bureaucratic red tape. So the Uniting for Ukraine program is a much faster process. Anyone can sponsor a Ukrainian citizen to receive humanitarian parole. They are allowed to stay in the United States up to 24 months. If you are wanting to sponsor a Ukrainian citizen to come to the United States, the best place to start is at the United States Citizens and Immigration Services website. That is uscis.gov. They have a very straightforward process on there of how you can engage and what you'll need to do and what forms you'll need to fill out. You basically go through the process of filling out a form I-134, which is a declaration of financial support. Everything is done online. It's pretty easy and convenient. And as far as matching with a Ukrainian individual that you may want to sponsor, if you already know somebody over there, you're kind of able to go through the USCIS website and fill out that information. You have to have their name and some other additional information. But there is a matching program. It's not set up by the federal government, but the federal government is kind of using it as a private public sector partnership, if you will, to be able to match people with Ukraine if you don't know someone over there. That website to start the matching process. And if you are wanting to be matched, I would recommend you start at this website first. And it's ukraine.welcome.us. You can create an online profile there. I believe you should be able to see profiles of Ukrainians that want to be matched with a sponsor to be able to come here. If that's not up, it should be up soon. But once you go through that process on ukraine.welcome.us, it'll then direct you to the uscis.gov website to fill out the additional form. From what we've heard, if you go through that process, it takes about 7 days for things to get approved and cleared. A sponsor will have to go through a background check. The Ukrainian beneficiary will have to go through a background check. We've been told that's taking about 7 days. And once that happens, the Ukrainian beneficiary would get a travel authorization. They would have that travel authorization for 90 days. And then it would be the sponsor's responsibility to work with the Ukrainian beneficiary to get them to the United States. Once that beneficiary is in the United States, there's a form they can fill out to get work authorization, so they can choose to work if they want to. There's also a number of benefits that they would be eligible for. I believe for 9 months, they would be eligible for the SNAP program and Medicaid as well. A couple other highlights on this program. Right now, unfortunately, there is no government funding for this. The sponsor is expected to take care of the needs of the people they sponsor. So this includes travel such as costs such as air travel and the cost of supporting the Ukrainian citizen once they are here. One important note is that this program, it's not a substitute for the standard refugee process or for regular humanitarian parole. This was stood up specifically for the people of Ukraine, and it's meant as a temporary measure. Last I heard, I think it was end of first week in June, we have these stats. There were about 45,000 potential volunteers across the United States that have filed applications, and I think there were about 6,500 Ukrainians that have come into the United States since this program was launched in April. So when I say this is a really quick process, I mean it. We're able to have people come over here and get settled much more quickly than the standard refugee process. So Uniting for Ukraine is the best program we believe right now for individuals that are wanting to come over here. There is an extensive kind of FAQ details that are listed on the uscis.gov website, as well as ukraine.welcome.org that have a lot of really great information. We'll have the Q&A session, obviously, but I would also encourage you to start there. And if it's something you're seriously considering, to read through all that, learn more about the responsibilities and what goes on there. So there are a few eligibility requirements that I'll touch on just briefly. For Ukrainian beneficiaries, you have to have been a resident of Ukraine as of February 11th of this year. You have to have the sponsor in the United States, which we talked about. And there's some vaccination requirements. And one other thing, I mentioned the background checks. They'll also have to pass kind of a rigorous biometric and biographical screening and some security checks as well. They'll also be able to, I'm told, purchase health exchange marketplace insurance plans on the healthcare exchange market that the federal government has set up. Some eligibility requirements for the sponsors. You have to be a U.S. citizen or permanent resident or otherwise a lawfully present individual. So that's one of the things when you fill out the declaration of financials forms, the I-134 that I mentioned, that process is basically to make sure that you are financially able to support a Ukrainian beneficiary in this program. I mentioned earlier, there's the humanitarian parole. That's kind of a standard process for parolees, not specific to Ukraine, but it's available for anybody that would want to come here based on some sort of emergency. But again, the wait time, I'm told on that is 12 months. And if you're in Ukraine, you may not have 12 months, or if you've had to escape to another country, you want to get settled right away. It is worth mentioning that I said Poland has taken in a lot of refugees. Right now, Ukrainians are able to cross into those other European countries, and I believe they can stay for up to 3 years without a passport, which is really good on our European allies for making that available. But in addition to humanitarian parole, there's the U.S. refugee admission process, and there's about kind of 3 different ways, which I won't go into detail on that, but that's the standard process. It takes a long time to be able to do that, which is why we think that Uniting for Ukraine is the best option right now, and we're so thankful that the federal government stood that up, because it's going to bring real change to real people. I will close with this. It's so important that we help the people of Ukraine. They are an ally, and the fact of the matter is Americans care. We've stood up time and time again over the years through different world crises, and this is a fight for freedom, and it's a fight for democracy, and it affects us all. I will leave you with a quote from John F. Kennedy that the senator often uses that I think really highlights what we're all here for. And it's that we in this country and this generation are by destiny rather than choice, the watchmen on the walls of world freedom. So I think you all in this room are a part of that here tonight. So it means a lot that you would come here and show a desire to be able to help the people of Ukraine. And I know it means a lot to them too. And the senator often says that, you know, our problems aren't going to be solved in Washington, D.C. They're going to be solved by our local communities. So we're going to do what we can on the federal level and get Ukraine the military funding, humanitarian funding that we need. But we also are interested in this Uniting for Ukraine program, which allows the community to come together and provide support and help. So thank you for being here tonight. Over to Laura from Catholic Social Services. Thank you.
Thank you, Sam. And thank you also, Jevan and Kate, for planning this really beautiful presentation. And thank you for inviting Catholic Social Services to be a part of it. Such a special evening. A couple complimentary, my name is Laura Roesch, and I've been with Catholic Social Services for 33 years, all of my career since I came to Dayton. And it's been an amazing experience to work with an organization that provides so much good. Catholic Social Services is just finished celebrating our 100th year of service. And Refugee Resettlement is one of our longest standing programs in our organization. We have many services for children, for seniors, for families, for special populations like the people impacted by the Memorial Day tornadoes of 2019. And we would consider those, the refugee program, a very special population as well. Again, one of our most enduring areas of work. A couple complimentary thoughts to Sam's sharing about the United for Ukraine, and especially about the millions of people who have fled to Poland. I think it's important to mention that the majority of people will want to go home. You know, they've fled out of fear and the crisis, but they're going to want to go home if they can, when they can. I think it remains to be seen what will be there to go home to. But return to the country where a refugee has fled from is generally the top choice. It's what they want the most, is to go home. A second would be to stay in a nearby country where there would be easy access to loved ones, maybe common language, shared culture. And then resettlement is kind of the third and final option for people who have fled again because of war, because of persecution, because of ethnic cleansing, religious intolerance, hatred, things that we have to stand up against. And so the formal program that Sam had been mentioning is what Catholic Social Services has been involved with for, again, over 60 years. Our partners in this work are the U.S. State Department and the Conference of Catholic Bishops. The refugees, again, are fleeing their home country due to unsafe conditions or war, persecution, and are provided a special legal status upon arrival that allows them immediately to work, to access public benefits, to become part of the community. It's a special legal status upon arrival. The expectation for the refugees is that they apply for a green card within a year and also apply for citizenship after 5 years. The role of the organization, Catholic Social Services in this case, is to provide reception, and it's called R&P, reception and placement services, which begin at the airport. Usually very late at night. I don't know why, but very often the flights come in, you know, after 11 o'clock at night. And we pick up the family. We have arranged for housing, for we would plan to provide acculturation supports. And when I say acculturation, it's kind of teaching the unique differences between the country that they're arriving from and life in Dayton, Ohio. As a very simple example, we're running up upon 4th of July, right? It's a big celebration here for us in our country. Fireworks, very, very common. But if you can imagine what it would be like for a person who just fled a war-torn country, that fireworks are a very frightening experience. And that's just one very simple, very, very simple example. of learning a new culture, how to navigate public transportation, using banking, setting up banking, getting kids in school, accessing healthcare. I mean, all of those things are kind of established American resources are very, very unfamiliar to a person who has fled from Ukraine or Afghanistan recently, or the primary populations that we've been resettling through our formal program. Most recently are the Congolese has been our community that we've been committed to for quite some time, many years. So our role again is to provide initial housing, acculturation support and training, job training, employment services, access to healthcare, education, language services. Self-sufficiency is the goal, it's the number one goal as quickly as possible. So getting that first job is really important to secure. And then that's the start of the new life in Dayton, right? To have the housing, the access to the services that a family needs, and a job. But true resettlement takes many years, and many community partners and resources working together. I would especially highlight the role of volunteers and what you can do now. It's something to think about how you can get involved and help. There's so many different ways. But true resettlement takes many years. So the arrival and the early work of Catholic Social Services is just the very first start. In 2021, Catholic Social Services welcomed, I'm standing my tiptoes, can you see? Sorry. Catholic Social Services welcomed 238 newly arriving refugees from Afghanistan and the Democratic Republic of Congo, made up 90% of the arrivals. We've spoken quite a bit about the program that was stood up so quickly in response to the Ukraine crisis and to welcome the people united for Ukraine. Something very similar was stood up last year for the Afghanistan evacuation and the Afghans who fled. We were really pleased at Catholic Social Services. It was kind of a different process, but if you remember, there were about almost 80,000 people evacuated from Afghanistan, and they arrived first to US military bases. You remember that? And then after the processing and the background checking and the security assessments, then went to local resettlement organizations, including Catholic Social Services in Dayton, Ohio. But we were really pleased to have a chance to deploy our refugee resettlement manager for 2 weeks, and we sent him to Fort Lee, Virginia to help out. And he was very willing to go, very excited to be part of that. And we were grateful that he would make himself available. It was certainly an investment for Catholic Social Services to lose our manager of an active AP program for 2 weeks, but it was important for us to support the effort. So our manager, he actually has left us since then. He got a wonderful new job directing immigration and refugee services at Catholic Charities Diocese of Buffalo, New York. So he has moved on to bigger and better opportunities, and we miss him here in Dayton. But he shared so many interesting stories about what he did there at Fort Lee, Virginia to help. I mean, he made meals. He played games with children, made beds, helped out with paperwork. I mean, they kind of did whatever they needed to do to support the people that had arrived and, get them settled until they could get on to the next step at a local resettlement organization. So last year, our services focused primarily on the Afghans and then the refugees from the Democratic Republic of Congo. We have an urgent need, if you can think about or someone, for housing. Dayton didn't have enough affordable housing prior to our tornadoes in Memorial Day, just over 3 years ago now. We didn't have enough affordable housing then. We don't have enough affordable housing now. I think we're all, understanding and watching the news how much the cost has risen on just the basics, right? Gasoline, groceries, rents have gone up. Our refugees and the people that all the people that we serve that are on very, very modest income have a very hard time finding safe, affordable housing. If you are own an apartment building, or you know somebody who can rent, and you would be open to renting from with a refugee, that would be something that would be of great value. So please think about who you know. And renting to a refugee, requires a little bit of extra support and maybe a little bit of risk taking too, because most often they don't come with a credit history. And they might be having just an entry-level job to get started. But again, it's the start of the brand new life. It's not the completion of the brand new life. But affordable, safe housing is a key need for our program and our community. So I would ask you to give that some consideration. I would also ask you to give some consideration to who you know that can hire our refugees. Very hardworking. They're eligible to work. They have what's called the work documents that are necessary for employment are called an I-94, and they'll have a social security card. But, language, may require extra support, so it's something to think about. Oftentimes the refugees have had jobs and careers in the countries that they have fled from that don't easily translate to equivalent positions here in the US. And again, it's the start of a brand new life. It's not the conclusion yet. But think about who you know that's hiring. I went out with some of the refugee team members today to iSupply, that company out there, iSupply, and we met with Jerry Parisi and some members of his team to talk about jobs that they had available in transportation, logistics, warehousing, distribution. Those are all really appropriate first jobs for a refugee. Some of our people are employed in like the hospitality area, and then can proceed with special training to get the credentials for those kinds of jobs that they want next. So I would just ask you to think about those two things in particular. Who do you know, or do you have an apartment you could rent, a home you could rent, or do you have jobs that you can make available for people who desperately need them? That is, again, self-sufficiency is the goal, and the job is the necessary first step. So I thank you for thinking of those ways that you can help. And there are lots of other ways as well. We'll be getting into highlighting those ways to get involved when we get to the panel. Am I hitting on the information that you were looking for? The refugee work is close to our hearts. The Catholic call to welcome the stranger is important to us. It's life-saving work, and you can help support it. You can get involved with other organizations because, again, we rely on many, many, many partners. So to have such a lovely and enthusiastic turnout here tonight, and I can see you're really listening and thinking about what you're hearing. I'm just grateful to be a part of it, and I thank you for your very kind attention.
So now we're going to transition to our panel discussion. Because I know at the end, when people are leaving, I may forget, it may be chaotic. I want to point out, if you missed it, there's a sheet to take home with you that says on the top, how you can help. And so we wanted everyone to be able to take this with them. There's specific links, places to go find more information on a number of ways to volunteer or contribute. So what we're going to do now is move some chairs to the front so we can seat our panel. What I'd ask is to take a minute to move some chairs. What I'd also ask is any panelists that haven't already been introduced or that I introduced and butchered their name, please step over to the microphone, introduce yourself, say something brief about what your organization does. And if there's something, if there are specific ways that people can volunteer with your organization, please give a succinct description of that. And with that, we'll move some chairs and we'll get started again in 2 minutes. Without further ado, I'm going to hand over the microphone to our panelists to introduce themselves, and we'll get the show on the road.
Hello, My name is Dieu Mukunzi. I'm an immigrant from Rwanda. I came here back in 2008. I was living in a homeless house downtown Dayton, and I was not speaking English, but I met volunteers like you who were able to help me, and I was able to pick up English. And I went to Wright State University. I did my master's in public health. And then after that, I worked for CareSource for 6 years. And after that, I worked for Montgomery County Public Health Department. After that, I got another job with Ohio State University Medical Center. And now I am, we have a nonprofit to help immigrants to navigate the U.S. healthcare system and other community resources. The nonprofit is called Ebenezer Healthcare Access. Thank you all for all you do to support immigrants. You know, I am the typical example. You took me from a homeless house, and now I am leading a nonprofit. Thank you for all you do.
Sam Bain again with Senator Portman's office. I cover the 9-county region, or 9 counties around the Dayton region, kind of helping with all things that pertain to the federal government.
Laura Roesch again, Catholic Social Services.
Hi, everyone. My name is Molly Brunk, and I run the Be Hope Immigration Center. We are a church plant from Be Hope Church in Beaver Creek, and we provide low-cost legal services for immigrants and refugees in the area.
Hi, my name is Mike Lehner. I work at Catholic Social Services with Laura. I'm the Director of Marketing and Development, so I work with a lot of volunteers and a lot of people interested in figuring out how they can support refugees here in our community. And I have to add, I thought you were going to say this, but we're also in desperate need if anybody out there has a warehouse space. So our, when we resettle refugees, one of our first steps, as Laura pointed out, was we have to not only find a home for them, but we also have to fill that home with everything that goes into a home. So everything from couches and beds to brooms and dishes. And we need a warehouse to store all that stuff so that we can quickly put it out there when a family arrives. So we just got, we are in need of a new warehouse space. So we got 4,000 to 6,000 extra feet laying around. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Ashley Lackovich, and I'm the Executive Director of the Brunner Literacy Center. And we offer free tutoring to any adult in need of literacy services. And about 1/3 of the people we serve are immigrants, most of them refugees. All of our tutors are volunteers. And so while we do not need warehouse space, we do need tutors. So I would love to see you with us.
Good evening, my name is Jeannette Horwitz. I'm the coordinator for Welcome Dayton for the city of Dayton. So hands up, how many of you have heard of Welcome Dayton before? Very good, very good, happy to see that. So we are part of the Community Engagement Division with the city of Dayton, and we are a connector. So we connect people and organizations with various resources in the city.
That's our panel. Please stand up. I'll moderate, so go ahead.
Yes, I'm Roger Crum, a Oakwood resident, member of the leadership team of the Oakwood Inclusion Coalition. My question goes to you, Laura Roesch, as well as to the whole of the panel. You've articulated that a major need for refugees is employment. In the last several years, with the coming of the pandemic, we've seen many local employers struggling to fill positions. Is there any effort afoot to coordinate this Miami Valley need for entry-level workers that could be channeled toward your purposes and our purposes collectively?
That's a big systems question and an excellent one, because what you're recognizing is there are employers that have open jobs and job seekers who are looking for work. And so we are always interested in any kind of broad scale systematic approach to highlight the strengths of the people that we have. We're involved in a project through Jobs Ohio. Ohio to Work would be one example of a coordinated effort, which is regional, includes the Cincinnati area and Dayton. We're replicating an approach that started first in the Cleveland area. So we partner with Sinclair. I think I mentioned I was at an iSupply today, meeting with a prospective employer. We have staff working that are integrated into the resettlement program that with a focus on building relationships with employers in the community. Because there's certainly some unique qualities that need to be considered around language, around the culture of the American workplace, and providing those extra supports. But I will share with you that we have fantastic placement rates with our refugees are employed within the majority, within 3 months. They advance, they retain their jobs, they go toward that next position, they get promoted, can pass the drug test. I mean, it's a very, very hardworking, reliable group of folks who just really want to get that life started in Dayton and need that job. So if you know of other coordinated kind of resources in the community, I am all ears. Montgomery County through the Job Center is quite involved in this work as well. And so I would love to know more people or systems or approaches. If you have any suggestions, I think we would all benefit from that.
Could be a great project for maybe a student group at the University of Dayton to figure out how to arrange such a database and make it operational.
So I was gonna say, Theo's sitting right here from the University of Dayton.
He's the best. He's the best we have.
Has Roger given me a task? Thank you, Roger.
No, morning on your desk.
If I could add, so I probably get a call a week, Roger, from an employer who wants to hire our refugees. And I would say, unfortunately, about 3 times out of 4, we can find a reason why, unfortunately, they have to be disqualified from being able to hire refugees because of a transportation issue. I mean, they might be in Sydney and they're dying for people, but transportation is often a huge issue for a refugee. So there are certain systematic challenges, as Laura was pointing out, that cause many employers just to not be able to do it, even though they're dying to.
The
But
need plus the systematic challenges
Correct.
need to be studied.
yes.
There are 2 restaurants at Caroline Park that have been closed since the pandemic. And every time I go over there, I talk to them about, can you work with Dayton cooks? Can you get these places open? And they said, oh, no, we just can't find people. And they said, no one wants these jobs. They're waiters and things like that. And people just don't want those. And yet, last weekend, there was a train show, thousands of people, they could have made a fortune. And the restaurants are closed, and they're lovely restaurants. I mean, there's a cafe, and then there's, the only thing that is open is the brewery, and that's on part-time selling beer. And yet, there are these wonderful facilities, but I don't know how you get them motivated to hire, because there are people there that need jobs.
Yeah, I would say that one language would be very difficult, waiting tables.
But, isn't there a way to do that? I mean, Google.
There's always a way.
Yeah, they could give them, Google Translate.
Away from this thing. I think it's reverbing.
Well, in terms of language, we actually work with a lot of immigrants who are either searching for a job or who have a job and need a specific vocabulary. And that's the nice thing about the service that we offer, is that it's one-on-one tutoring. So if you were just hired by an employer, but you need a specific vocabulary, you need certain grammar, or the employer has identified language needs, we can work with them. So there are services in the community, but it's also that networking between us and then for the employer and the people in need.
Question here?
Okay, the question is this. Coming from a Western civilization, I've been in Russia, I've been in Ukraine. How well prepared are these refugees to take these jobs. They come from a different culture than someone from the Western Eastern culture. So what is their education? And what kind of jobs? Yeah, one of them you'll find will probably be very much professionals on that. So I'm just asking it, what do you think? How well prepared are they to meet our standards?
So I would like more clarification of the questions. If there is someone who can answer the question.
I will say that for the United for Ukraine program, again, specifically for the beneficiaries that come over from here, they do get access to certain benefits from the Office of Refugee Resettlement. So that would include case management. There's some employment services that they offer, and I think they offer some English language classes as well. So there is some effort to kind of help bridge that gap. And I would imagine there's other community efforts that can be put into place as well.
In addition to the language, and we mentioned the transportation as a barrier, I think it's important to remember the traumatic experience that they've just been through. And so some attention to behavioral health and just addressing and being aware will be important for the teachers that are teaching the kids, the employers who are employing the adults, you know, the landlord who is offering a place to stay, the church that is welcoming. It's been quite a traumatic experience, and that doesn't just go away when you come to Dayton, Ohio. Pay attention.
I have a question to ask the panel from online. This is from Marjorie Harrell, and it's actually a couple of linked questions. So the first question is, can you speak to financial assistance that's available to landlords who are looking to rent to refugees, and where does the money come from?
Well, initially, part of the traditional resettlement program that Catholic Social Services offers provides rent for the first 90 days for the landlord. So there is some assistance that comes through the resources of Catholic Social Services initially, and then the person is working and is paying rent.
And
so it's just stuff to get it started, and then the refugee would take it over and be paying rent.
And is anything analogous available for people involved in the humanitarian resettlement program?
In terms of the rent assistance now?
Yeah.
That's back to the sponsor.
Yep.
Would be responsible. And I'm not sure if this is how accurate this is, and maybe Sam can comment, but I read a study of sponsorship programs, and generally that a sponsor on average could spend around $4,000 per person that they're assisting. When you think about it, that's actually pretty affordable. If you're covering the food, the rent, the gasoline, you're providing transportation, some of those costs. And again, I think you have to think about the resources that you have to offer, but would not be available in the sponsorship program. No.
There's a again on the FAQ on the Ukraine.welcome.us website, there's a list of resources that will kind of help people get started if you're a sponsor. Definitely encourage you to check that out and read that. May be some ideas in there that you haven't thought of before. I had heard the same statistic. I think welcome.us says it's about a $3,000 average or so right around the same of what you should expect to be able to contribute. And there's a number of different options on the housing. I mean, some people mentioned Airbnb. It could be a room in your house if you wanted. So it doesn't just have to be one thing. There's a number of different options that could be worked out there. But the work authorization is also key, that they can get that ability just to be able to work in the United States so they can kind of hit the ground running and get on their way to self-sufficiency.
One last landlord question. Are translators available to work with landlords who are looking to rent to refugees?
Yes.
Excellent.
What's the age breakdown of the refugees who come in?
The majority are families large families, and so we have many, many children. So I'd have to go back and study it for the age breakdown, but I would say generally, large families, multi-generational families, lots of kids.
Right here.
We just received a family this week. So we have a mom and 2 children, 10-year-old and 18-year-old, and they have visas that need to be changed over because their visas are tourist visas. Can you recommend how we go about doing that? Because I guess their visas are gonna expire, or, in October. And the son is getting ready to go to college, so he has a visitor visa, but it needs to be changed into a student visa.
And the other one is the, like, refugee status or something where she won't be sent back in 60 days. I mean, we don't know who to ask these questions to.
Yeah.
And that's our question is, who do we go to? Do I call up
Yeah.
Mr. Portman, or
Yeah.
what do I do?
Yeah, no, so the VHOPE Immigration Center, we can handle cases like that, and we are about 10% of what normal immigration attorney charges. And so you can book a consultation for the family, and you can come in and we can figure out next steps for each one of them, and then we can take on the case. And so we have about 40 volunteers who assist with the legal paperwork. Yeah, so questions like that, accessible resources, the Immigration Center, if you Google us, you can find our website, but I can also share our website with you afterwards.
Okay.
But yeah, anyone,
It's VHOPE.
Immigration Center,
Okay.
yeah, and our website. Oh, perfect, it's all on that paper.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I'm not an attorney, I'm an accredited representative, which is a program through the Department of Justice. And so, but we can figure out what we need to do for them.
Okay.
Oh, sorry.
I will get you my card after we're done here. We have great immigration caseworkers in our office that can help with these things as well. We work with immigration attorneys as well. VHOPE is also a great resource.
See, all we have are questions, we
Right.
have no answers.
Right.
We don't know who to ask. That's the biggest.
But I will give you my card as well. We connect you with our immigration caseworker and see if there's an avenue. We can generally we help when things are delayed. If we need to help speed up the
Well,
process.
the one question is, he had a scholarship to go to UC for swimming. Well, that got canceled because of the war. He's now been accepted to University of Evansville, but he has to go back to Germany next month to get it renewed as a student. He can't do it here. And Evansville can't help him, or they haven't got back to us
It
yet.
was the only, no, it ended up being that was the only place he could go. That they had an opening for him to change it over from an appointment from a student to a regular visa. A student, I'm getting this mixed up. A visitor to a student.
But the idea that he has to fly back to Germany to make that happen, and his father is still in Ukraine, and that's how the father made that arrangement. And we're going, really, is that the only way you can do it?
We're told that that was the only appointment that they could get was in Germany, because everybody else is backlogged.
Absolutely understand. We'll connect after for sure.
Sam help?
He's gonna try.
He's gonna
Gonna
check.
give us some clarification.
Okay. You're gonna check it.
Question here.
I'm mama Susan to 20 Afghans.
Can you speak up a little bit?
I'm mama Susan to 20 Afghans, ranging from 4 to 70. And I was just wondering, there's an Afghan Adjustment Act that would work like the what they did with the Vietnam vets, Vietnam people who came over in the 70s, and they become citizens quicker. I was wondering if that's, I mean, I guess we're directing this to Sam, but is there any, I mean, I know if there's a bill out there, but the kids were like, let's get in the car, let's go to Washington. I'm like, yeah, I don't think it works that way. We can go, but after January 6th, I don't think it works for into the Capitol like that. So anyway, but yeah, I just wondering what can be done, because I mean, like after Vietnam, the Vietnam refugees got citizenship. Like right now, I think it's August 2023. their status is unknown, so.
There may be a few bills out there. I'm not familiar with them. I don't believe there's anything concrete in place right now where the federal government is working towards that. The United for Ukraine program is temporary for 2 years. After that, the expectation, we don't know what the world will be like in 2 years, what the situation will be, but the expectation is that they could go back to Ukraine and.
She was asking about Afghanistan.
Oh, Afghanistan
They
specifically.
cannot go back. These people
Oh.
are, they're an ethnic group that will be persecuted if they go back.
Oh, gotcha. My mistake. Let me give you my card after again. Talk a little further about that.
I will be blocking the plane if they go back.
Yeah.
I have just a little bit of a more general question relating to Mom Susan's. I was just wondering if Senator Portman is doing anything to facilitate sort of a speed up for accepting refugees into the country in the future. So for example, God forbid, the next Ukraine crisis, there's already avenues for accepting refugees, and refugees from ongoing crises could sort of benefit from that as well.
Yeah, I will say, so the United for Ukraine program is kind of a speed up for this particular process. We introduced that relief bill I talked about that dedicates some funding from seized Russian assets, Russian oligarchs to be able to fund that, because funding is always an issue as well. So we're definitely open to those types of things. And I don't have a specific answer for you on that right now, but, definitely open to those types of things and look at how we can, work with the administration going forward. The immigration and refugee process is largely overseen by the administration. So part of our role has also been calling for them and building relationships with them and encouraging them to take certain actions as well.
Just one extra comment, excuse me, the president does have the power to set the arrival number for the refugees to be admitted to the country. So generally speaking, refugee work has been supported in a bipartisan manner over time. We're rebuilding the capacity now.
I will add, I think the Biden administration bumped the cap up to 125,000 for refugees in general, and for Ukraine, they mentioned 100,000 refugees. So there is that effort to bump up that cap. I believe there are already 71,000 refugees from Ukraine that have come in after the war. Some of that is United for Ukraine. Some have come in through the southern border and other means, but there are efforts to speed that up.
I would add though that, this is a crisis that won't be solved by the United States. So I shared this with Jevan and Kate, and you can find this on the United Nations High Council on Refugee website. There's 26,500 people a day going into refugee camps around the world. And the United States will resettle 125,000. And we're the largest resettlement nation in the country or in the world. So it's not a problem that any nation or all nations can solve by just resettling refugees. I mean, the real issue is how do we support those communities by providing aid where they are and allowing them to get back to where they want to be.
And one last thing too, I think it can be discouraging when we think so macro level of like this ginormous system of we're just fighting this uphill battle. But I do think that the Welcome initiative that we have with Welcome Dayton and the work that Catholic Social Services has done in the area, it means that we resettle more refugees than just other random places. And so I think that that is something, a testament to the people of Dayton and the city of Dayton. And so I think that there's a hope in that of saying, okay, there's this large thing at play, but what can I do in my community and what can I do to be welcoming so that when the next thing happens, like you said, that, oh, they'll think of Dayton to send people here because we can integrate them into our community.
Yes. I just have a detailed question on the sponsorship program that I didn't understand. It seems like I heard the $4,000 numbers on average. Okay. But I also didn't hear any clarity as to what happens if they get sick. How is their health covered, or is it covered, or is that the sponsorship responsibility? responsibility as well?
So kind of yes to all those. So it is the sponsorship's responsibility to help with that. My understanding is they can access Medicaid for 9 months. And again, this is kind of where the work authorization comes in. They do have the ability to purchase health insurance plans on the marketplace, the healthcare marketplace from the Affordable Care Act. And those are some of the programs available. There's one other I'm trying to think of, but my mind is drawing like,
SNAP.
yeah, SNAP, they can access SNAP for 9 months as well. But on the health insurance thing, any alien in the United States, I believe, is able to access like a one-time healthcare catastrophic event, essentially. So if that were to happen, they have that in addition to the Medicaid and be able to purchase a healthcare plan.
So in addition to what he was saying, when they get here, they are eligible for Medicaid. And then they will continue to have Medicaid until their income is high. So some of them can be on Medicaid for 60 months, others can be on Medicaid for 5 years, depending on their income.
It seems to me after all these years of having immigrants come in this country, that this whole system is so cumbersome. And you guys all do such wonderful work. I mean, if it worked for you and the nonprofits, it sounds like these people would sink. So where is the continuity, regardless of the state? I mean, I know the federal government does what they can do, but it seems like there is no definition of, okay, you come to the United States, you're going to be designated to a state that you've been offered a place to live. Here is what you need to do. I mean, it seems so pretty simple to me that there's a checklist of you come here and then this happens. Why is this so complicated and cumbersome for these poor people? I just don't, I'm sitting back here and all these people do such wonderful things for these people. And it's like your slack that you're picking up seems like somebody's missing in this whole process. So I'm just curious what you guys think. Where do you go for help? Like these poor people that are helping these individuals that have come to stay with them. We're at a library in Dayton, Ohio, and they're asking you questions that somebody at the state level or the federal level or somewhere ought to be able to answer those for them without them having to, seek out help from a nonprofit. It seems kind of silly, the whole process seems silly to me. My great grandmother came here, 125 years ago, and it seems like the process wasn't as cumbersome for her.
I see a hand in the back, an enthusiastic hand that I have a feeling will amplify this point.
I'm interested in the answer to the question that was just read.
Is your comment in addition to this, or do you wish to wait for the answer?
Oh, thank you. God bless you.
So I came out of so when Catholic Social Services resettle people, they stay here for 90 days. But then after 90 days, refugees are at their home. So because some of them, as they explained to you, that some of them came from refugee camp, they didn't have enough education to go to school. Therefore, their learning process is very slow and they don't know English. So that's why, for example, our organization is recruiting mentors for these families, just helping them very, teaching them like how to read their mail, how to, pay groceries, or, purchase groceries or groceries and how to go to anything, they need. Usually mentors are there to help only once a week, probably 1 hour, which is not very difficult, and their children, they pick up. So they help families. So right now, for example, right now with this young lady, when they came over, the family could not speak English, but she had gone up to Sinclair. She's helping the community, she's helping the family. So they
they succeed, they just need somebody to help at the beginning. So it's because the 90 days is very short, and then they need somebody to pick up, and this is what we are trying to do. And of course, the community needs to help. So if you leave somebody who doesn't speak English, imagine you as American, you are going to a foreign country. No one is taking you around, no one is talking to you, and you expect somebody to interpret how. That's the job, and that is what we are doing, and that is what I requested, to have mentors to work with us and help these families. Otherwise, they are successful and they can do great in the community. And just to answer the question also for, there is a person who said, for employment, there are some people who are willing to give job, but for example, in restaurant and everything, but this employer is willing to have a teacher on the work site so that all these refugees, for example, some of them, they refuse to employ them, saying they will not listen to instruction, or they are afraid of hazard. So this employer willing to have a tutor in the workplace. So our organization is willing to pay a tutor to go to the work site and help. But the problem is, who is this employer? Because ever since many years I've been promoting English in the workplace, but not so many employers are open to do that. If they are, of course, so many people are interested in working while learning English.
Thank you, Catherine. In addition to what Catherine was saying, let me give you an example. People are coming here, they are giving them Medicaid. They might have Care Source, Molina, or Bacardi. Here in America, when you have insurance, you have to call your doctor. You cannot go like this. You have to call to say, hey, Dr. John, I will come to see you next week. So can you imagine if you go to China and they give you Chinese insurance and you have to call your doctor in Chinese? Then what is happening? So, for example, in our organization, what we do, we have like a hotline, people who speak French, Swahili, Kirundi, Kinyarwanda, and Kinyamurenge. They call and they say, hey, I need to see a doctor. And someone will pick up the phone to connect them to the doctor. To the question of employment, we do have people who are very smart. Some they were like state secretary. They were running big organizations, and they have PhDs and they have skills, but it's very hard to hire them because they want them to have like the PhD from here. I know someone who is here in America. He was leading one such project in 30 countries of Africa. You know what he's doing now? He's working in a factory. That's someone you can Google. He even discovered like oil to the gas to run the car. He discovered that. By now, he's working in a factory. They pay him like $12. Can you imagine? So it's very hard. I think we need to have some volunteers who will be working on advocacy. Let me give you another example. Someone is here, she is 65 years old, and she needs a citizenship. And she spent like 35 years in a refugee camp. She doesn't know how to read and how to write. And for her to get citizenship, they want her to know how to read English learned how to write English. You think that will happen? No. That's why we need some people to volunteer as advocates for those people. Thank you.
Yeah, go ahead. Hold on. Oh, one more.
So I'm going to try to address the question in the back. Things are complicated, but we still try to, to do this work. So with Welcome Dayton's been around for about 11 years. And it's a city initiative, kind of, I mentioned earlier, we connect people with resources in the city, connect organizations with resources in the city. But we also try to make sure that as a city of Dayton, we are welcoming to those who are new to the city in all these different areas and making things more easy for them, less complicated. So we have the Welcome Dayton board with about 24 members. We have 5 subcommittees, business and economic development, local government and justice, community arts and culture, education, and health and social services. And in all those committees, we have community members who work for companies and organizations and institutions in the city and the community. And then they go out in turn, kind of taking the Welcome Dayton message to those areas and trying to make processes a little bit less complicated. I don't know if that makes sense, if that answers the question, but that's kind of a very important part of what Welcome Dayton does, to try to make things easier for people when they're here. And they change all the time. Rules change, laws change, administrations change, and then comes new rules. And so, there's always something new that we have to look at and then go, all right, what do we do with this? And how do we handle that? So I hope that helps clarify a little bit.
I just think without you all, everybody would be sunk. Seems like the process is just work. I mean, it just boggles the mind.
Well, first of all, I appreciate you saying that, but I will toss it back to what our friend in the back said, which is, for us Catholic Social Services, we are really responsible for those first 90 days. And then we rely on communities to support those people ongoing. So places like Brunner and others that are there for people to provide mentorship, to provide that ongoing support, to provide jobs, to provide friendship, and all those things that you need for long-term stability. That's where meetings like this are really important. So, and getting the word out to people to say, we do need as many of you out there helping people as possible, because we can't do that. I mean, we're bringing 250 to 400 refugees a year on average. And so you can imagine what that toll would take if you were involved in all of their lives, to the extent that it requires.
Okay, question.
Okay, some refugees come here with advanced degrees and professional experiences, and in some cases, their degrees and experiences are not recognized, okay, for a variety of reasons, and maybe good reasons. And so somebody let's say was a medical doctor back home, and they may be washing dishes or stuffing envelopes. To me, that's an enormous waste of talent. Some places have programs where people with specialized degrees can get recertified for the United States. Is there anything been discussed about that in Dayton area or elsewhere in Ohio?
So Welcome Dayton has been doing some of that work over the years and kind of bringing that back again to do credential evaluations. We have our education subcommittees looking into that to see how can we facilitate, because we have members of UD, Red State, St. Clair, et cetera, on that committee. And so those are perfect people to kind of help out with that. So nothing concrete in place right this moment, but it's something that's really, really on top of that committee's agenda to work on.
As I understand, the recertification may involve people going through some program, maybe taking some courses and things like that. And to make sure that they're up to Western knowledge on a particular field, whatever it might be.
Exactly. And so part of it is outreach to the universities to see, okay, so we have somebody who is certified nurse in their country. what can they take here in order to kind of transfer that certification? Can you make it a little bit easier for them, or, you know, let's look at what's, you know, equivalent coursework and so forth. So very important. And since I have the microphone, I'm going to share real quick. I'll take this opportunity. We have 2 events coming up, or this is one event, just if you're interested, since, you know, in helping out. We have an Afghan welcome event August 6th at the Dayton Metro Library. If you go to the welcomedayton.org website, you can get contact information for us. Please reach out, and then I will happily send you more information about this, but I have a flyer about that. And on the other side of the flyer, we have an art exhibit for New Americans that will be at the Dayton Metro Library this November and December. So we're looking for submissions for that from New Americans in the community. This is our 2nd year. These are great events to get involved and help out and volunteer and get connected and find out, you know, more, what can you do in the community to help out. So thank you for letting me plug that.
Going along with the question about skilled workers, how difficult is it if you have a skilled position to match that up? Is that, I mean, you know, if it's very specialized, is that something you can, you know, hand pick? Not you being the company, but you being social services or whoever. Is it, or are we looking at a smaller population of whoever's already been approved to come? That makes sense.
One of the things we would do in employment services is to review their work history, you know, look for those skills, identify the skills, prepare a resume, work on interviewing, help identify appropriate employers, and build upon the strengths that they have. And you know, the employer who desires to hire refugees generally is has a heart for it and is willing to provide some extra supports as needed, has been our experience, because again, very, very excellent employees. And that kind of person-centered approach that you're talking about in terms of like what other skills, how do we build upon and add credentials, get vocational training, get to Sinclair, all of that is quite a personal approach, and it's very effective when we have excellent employment placement rates.
I would add the other important thing to note is the 90 days to self-sufficiency. We're talking about, you know, retraining people and teaching them language and new skills that we have to get them a job. So while they may have to work at a factory, and that's awful and unfortunate, it does pay the bills. And so, you know, with that goal of being self-sufficient within 90 days in mind, you know, that's really important to not, you know, minimize that, to say that that job doesn't have value because they did something before. It is providing for them today. And the hope is, and oftentimes we do find those people with exceptional skills do find a way, they find a path to that and out of that factory job into a, you know, whether it be going back to, you know, pursue further education here in the United States, or finding that employer that's willing to, you know, take that risk. So.
I just have a question about the assumption here is that they have English. If they are a professional and they don't have English, they will never get to that. I shouldn't say never, if they're young enough, but if they come as a 50 or 60-year-old, to imagine that they would be able to improve their English and then take that certification at that level. Yeah. All of us can think of our immigrant parents or grandparents or a friend from Italy. For 4 years, she's been trying to get her pronunciation, and she ended up getting her high school graduation degree. She had to go back and so that she can go to Sinclair. Well, this is 5 years in, and she is working restaurant jobs, but they speak too fast. So I've watched her struggle through 4.5 years of language study and working, and no assistance. It's just taking advantage of those ESL classes and being a self-advocate with community support.
So it takes a long time to learn the language. From zero.
Yeah. I speak to a lot of high school classes, like all over the city. And I don't know why I always use this example, but I always say, imagine moving to Yemen tomorrow and being able to survive in 90 days on your own. And they're all like, well, Yemen is such a foreign country and concept to them. But yeah, to your point, it's extremely challenging. What's interesting is the different populations and the skill sets that they do come with. So the Afghan population, for instance, does have a lot of English skills when they arrive, because many of them were translators for the United States government. And so when they came, a lot of them did have some skills that the folks that we typically resettle from the Democratic Republic of Congo do not have. Very few of them have any English at all.
You know, I would add to that very quickly is that if people already know a European language, let's say French or German, it's easier to pick up English than somebody that doesn't have that.
Correct.
And many people from the Congo may know French.
Yes.
A question in the back?
Yeah. Staying with the theme of employment, but also the other themes that have been raised here, health resources, warehouse resources, all sorts of human services resources. One of the things that occurs to me is that in Oakwood in particular, in the Miami Valley in general, there are retired CEOs of major corporations who are thick on the ground. And it seems to me that if we could somehow put together a core group of these individuals who are public spirited and who have not only enormous personal resources, but more important than personal resources, these are individuals with incredible skills and incredible Rolodexes. And I think if we could have a dream team of retired Oakwood CEOs, we might get somewhere really fast on each and every one of the challenges that's been represented.
You are not wrong.
This sounds like you're volunteering.
I mean, I know certain of these people. I'm not one of them, but I know them. And Jevan, I'd be willing to talk with you about, where to go from here on this.
Great.
Because these people just have the pull to make stuff happen. And all they do is get on the phone and it happens. And I think, Oakwood is, I think, a community that's eager to help. And I think these people need to be brought around a table and applauded for their resources and their background and asked for their assistance in how to coordinate the multiple needs that have been articulated in this very good panel.
And I'd amplify this going back to something we said at the beginning, which was coming in, all of us are going to identify opportunities that are unique to us or that resonate with us. Some of us know CEOs. Some of us have spare rooms. Some of us are language tutors. There was another question here in the back.
To speak to the spare room comment, we're empty nesters and we would have space, but we're not landlords. We don't have multiple tenant houses or things like this. Are people coming interested in sharing space, Airbnb style, or do they really want their own apartment and be left alone? I think that's.
Well, I had them at my house for 6 weeks. I mean, and it was great. I had every meal cooked for me, but they were ready to go. I mean, because I lived in Esther, I had 3 empty rooms, and I said, this is my house, your house, and everything, but it was great. It was rewarding, but it was also like, they're like, when do we get our house? And I'm like, well, we're working on it. They're like, when do we get our house? So yes and no. I mean, and I'm
like, I think if you had a single person from Ukraine or, you know, someone else, it might be different, but this is a family of 6 kids, 6 people. And so they're just kind of like, okay, you know, and my house is nice size, but yeah, they're just like, yeah, we need our own house, you know, so anyway, that's just my experience.
Did you also want to speak up?
You want
Question in front?
Is the Dayton Foundation involved in any way?
Dayton Foundation's a funder of a lot of different social services.
There's no, we haven't received any grants from Dayton Fund. We got a lot of funders, a lot of private individual funders that that do support us through the Dayton Foundation. I don't know about these other organizations.
It's more individual funders.
Yeah. So no, but
Can I say one more thing? So I'm, after this experience, and you guys, I love Catholic Social Service and all they've done, but I've been working with people in St. Louis called Welcome Neighbors, and they take over where, like in 90 days, they take over and with the help of Catholic Social Service, which that's a different conversation there, but they will take people like myself who are empty nesters and will help them connect with families. And like right now, the families I'm working with, they're working 60 hours a week because they have to. They have big families. I mean, one family is 6 and one family 8. So they're working 60 hours a week. So those kids are sitting there at home. So I'm running like a day camp. I've learned how to swim and doing all this stuff. And I mean, it's been wonderful. Like my kids are gone. I like, it's wonderful. So I'm working with them. And if you guys are interested, I mean, the spot, I'm not discouraging anyone to do sponsorship, but I'm just saying, I'm hoping to get together with Catholic Social Services and talk about this. But there's another place in Pittsburgh, but they're going to try to like, I'm going to write a grant for it and everything, but it's an opportunity for people who don't want to like do the full sponsorship, but to be involved with these families if possible. So we're going to see what we can do. But once again, this has been so rewarding for me. I mean, it's crazy. This week I had 6 appointments that I'm taking different people to, you know, so, but they just need drivers and like, you know, I'm like, okay, I'll go, but I need translators. So they bring someone along and they translate and everything. But yeah, I mean, I have a huge calendar, like what we're all doing. But yeah, so I'm just saying, you know, but just like taking on a hike, these kids are so delighted. They're like, yay, you know, right. So, but they need some adults step in and help.
Are you lacking in translators?
pass that off to you.
Well, we don't do translation, but I think we have 8 languages that our staff members can speak. And when we do the English language tutoring, even if the person speaks the language of the student, we try to encourage them to go in with English. Because the English is really what they have to learn. And usually the people we work with speak multiple languages. I mean, mentioning the DR Congo, a person will come in speaking 4, 5, 6 languages. So very quickly, especially with the one-on-one tutoring, people really do pick up.
So we use an outside contractor for all of those, translation services, local company that we can get on the phone with, or they can come in person. There's different levels of translation services. So to answer your question, I guess I misheard it at first, but yes, the translation services for us are always just kind of on call. So we never don't have it.
Can you share who the local company is?
It's called Vocalink, right?
Propio now.
Propio now.
Propio.
Yeah, they
It
changed
was
their name.
Vocalink, yeah.
Vocalink and now Propio. Propio's got there. There you go.
I think we're winding down here. If anyone has, I do have one request for a repitch of the Welcome Dayton events.
Did Matt Joseph write that?
I'll be happy to do that. I'll stand up here again. So first of all, we have August 6th from 10 to 12 at the Dayton Metro Library downtown. We have an Afghan welcome event. So we are focusing here on our new Afghans in the city. That flyer's here, and on the back, a call for artists for our art exhibit that's taking place also at the Dayton Metro Library downtown. It's a second art exhibit, second year we're doing this exhibit. And it will be in November, December, but the call for artists starts July 1st, so this Friday. New Americans, so refugees, immigrants, foreign-born can submit their art, and then it will be on display for 2 months this fall. And then, of course, we hope that you come and enjoy it and see that. So those are the 2 events.
Last minute for anyone who wants to plug something or. Okay, so I want to thank everyone for coming. I hope this was informative. Let's thank our panelists, please.